Avec la première ronde de...
Thank you, Minister. So we'll start our first round of questions. Mr. Vidal, you have 6 minutes, sir.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Minister, for coming today. Minister, you talked about the call to action number 53 and the importance of independence. I want to talk about independence for a couple of minutes. The Governor General, acting on the advice of Cabinet, appointed the interim board back in 2018. They did 6 months of work, came up with a final report. Then there was a long delay. You appointed the transition committee in December 21. And then, as you stated in your comments, that you, the minister, in collaboration with the transition committee, which you appointed, will select the first board of directors. You'll take their advice. This first board of directors is then to establish an application process for future boards members to be elected by a yet undefined membership. We don't know who that membership will be yet, according to the, I mean, I get the nonprofit organization. There's no articles of incorporation yet. I get all that. In your own words, when talking about this body, you say it isn't up to Canada to be grading itself, but yet when I look at this process, Minister, I have to be honest that I have to ask you why you're comfortable with either actually having so much direct control or influence over this body that's going to be tasked with holding your government to account and advancing reconciliation. And even if you don't feel that you actually have that direct control, the perception sure seems like you do.
And MP Vidal, it's a very, very fair question. And you know, as you look through the formation of the board, this is something that will be done with the committee. Ultimately, I consider the nomination of the first board a legal artifice. It's something that, you know, as it's written in black and white, that it is with the committee itself. The work is being done. I don't see my role as being one of that is to veto people. Indeed, in the appointment of the current committee right now, essentially, I could have a call on it, but I haven't, and they have determined themselves their membership. After that, it's the Not-for-Profit Act that prevails, and they will determine their own way of reproducing what is in the Act. But there's a sort of a legal construct in there that we have to get over as part of the first hurdle, and that's one that has to involve consultation. I'm open to getting recommendations that you have, fair. Because I do recognize the perception involved.
Yeah, sorry, I'm not trying to be rude. I have such limited time, and I have a lot of questions. Okay. I get what you're saying, and I get what you're implying, that you wouldn't override that. But the Act clearly says selected by the minister. That is the language of the actual bill. So, you know, in all fairness, the relationship with Indigenous people is one that probably lacks trust, and for good reason. There's lots of history for that to happen. So. I guess I'm concerned that you know, the government, with some of the record of the government, I mean, we could talk about all kinds of people, and I'm not going to go into specifics, but, you know, you're saying kind of trust me that I won't put any undue pressure, I won't influence the process, I won't, but the Act actually says you have control. So I guess you also opened the door to my next question would be, would you be willing to give up that control to alleviate the concerns of Indigenous people who have lost that trust? Is there would you sit down at the table with us and come up with a way that maybe we could actually ensure that it is Indigenous people, Indigenous organizations that not only appoint the future boards after 5 years, but actually are part of appointing that first board, which is going to set the playing field and the ground rules for all future election of the boards?
I don't want to diminish your point, MP Vidal. I'm open to recommendations of what this committee would suggest, the vast majority of whom are not Indigenous. So I don't want to reproduce the same artifice that you're criticizing this bill as having. Indeed, if you extend it to the whole parliamentary process, you have another set of arguments that feed into the initial criticism. So at one point, someone has to take a decision. I would highlight that it is an absolute discretion of the minister. It does say that it is done in collaboration with the transitional committee. But again, I'm open to recommendations of the committee as it considers other witnesses.
Thank you for that. You also talked in your comments about this legislation being co-drafted with Indigenous people, but yet Wilton Littlechild, one of the members of both the interim board and the transitional committee, is on the public record stating that, in fact, the bill was not co-drafted with Indigenous peoples. Is his criticism accurate, or what's his criticism compared to your comments in your comments today?
I haven't had the opportunity to speak to Dr. Littlechild on the matter.
Okay, well, I think that's something we could pursue.